Thank you, Richard. Gosh, that was really nice. Yeah, well, here we are again. I mean, the last time we did an event like this, it was just up the road in the Avalon Club, a much smaller venue. And a lot's happened since then, hasn't it? I mean, it's just got more and more weird. Our world, very, very weird. And the weirder it gets, the better it is, isn't it? Because we see it for what it is. And that's kind of the theme of, hopefully, what I'm going to talk about tonight. Because, you know, it's very easy to get fearful. But these people who are these organisations, the United Nations, the WEF, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the Davos crew that all get together, you know, they are not winning this. And we think they are because they make a lot of noise and they have a lot of summits and a lot of scary things. And they did something really bad 4 years ago, and we know what happened. And, you know, we now know. And, you know, the more people that really understand this, and this is why I talk about all of this, because a lot of people say, oh, you know, you mustn't look at it, you have to be in 5D, you know, don't be 3D. Well, you know, I live in Glastonbury, I do a lot of 5D-ish stuff, I have no idea. I do, you know, spiritual stuff, whatever. But you have to have your feet on the ground, and you have to straddle, you know, maybe I'm a little bit 5D sometimes, but mostly I'm looking at what is happening, and my way of being a spiritual person is flagging it up and talking about it, because we have to keep it in the peripheral vision. Don't buy into it too much. Don't get hung up on it. Honestly, if I did, I think I would have jumped off Beachy Head with a bottle of vodka by now. So, you know, they're trying to scare us, as they did 4 years ago. And we have to be so grounded, and it's like being in a storm and standing firm, because they will try, from what I can gather from the stuff that's been going on in the last few weeks, they will try and scare the bejesus out of us, and we mustn't buy into that fear, as that's exactly what Richard was saying a few minutes ago. Now, yeah, we've had, you know, the last time we got together, we hadn't had the can't be bloody bothered election. That's all happened. And the reason why we can't be bothered is because they're all singing from the same song sheet. What's the point? Because they are all being controlled by the United Nations and the WEF and the WHO. And we know that, but a lot of people don't. And I think the more that people do understand this, the less they'll be scared, because a lot of people do buy into fear. And the only way, I mean, it's awful because a lot of the time we're preaching to the converted, but I would hope there's some people here tonight that really could pass on information. And, you know, hopefully we'll get this out on a few of the social media platforms. But, you know, this is what the WEF, this was on their website, probably maybe just before the pandemic. I don't know whether it still is, I haven't looked. But this is what they're saying, you know, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. And that's what they want. They want us to actually live in this circular economy. And it all sounds very fluffy and very good. It's all good for the planet, they say. But there have been massive lies told in order to bring in a technocratic dictatorship and run by basically the globalists who want to seize control of our planet. And they're doing it incrementally. It's gradualism. It's a very Fabian way of doing things, is gradual. You just take it incrementally, and people don't know it's happening. So anyway, I'm just going to go into that. But if you value everything you hold dear, if you value your land, your countryside, the freedom to walk in the countryside, the freedom to be, freedom to own your own property if you can, the freedom to have bodily autonomy. This is what they want. They want everything, and we mustn't let them have it. We have to really stand in our sovereignty. Now, a lot of people, I'm going to have to run through this very quickly because a lot of people probably haven't seen some of my talks before. But basically, I'm looking at how this program of control has been going on for a very long time. It started in the technocracy movement of the 1930s. It probably goes way back to Venice and the black nobility, but I'm going to start at, the 1930s, because there was a big effort to create an energy-based economy then. They just had the Depression of the 1930s, and there was a whole load of kind of political scientists who had, and sort of quite left-leaning people who had decided that it was a good idea, and it seemed a good idea after the Depression. They were fed up with bankers and politicians, as we are now, and they decided to create an energy-based economy. And it came out of Columbia University, a guy called M.K. Hubbard and a guy called Howard Scott. And they set it all up and they called it Technocracy, Inc. And they really pushed this from about 1930 to 1947. Elon Musk's great-grandfather got involved in it, a guy called Joshua Haldeman. And they called it Technocracy, Inc. They held big rallies to try and get everybody into an energy-based economy and a completely different political and economic system from the price-based system that we'd had that had crashed during the 1930s. Well, it didn't work. People weren't ready to let go of capitalism at that point. The war had just ended in 1945. So then there was the big boom, the oil boom, and everybody was prosperous. So it all went away. It all went away. But the people that actually put it together still continued. And in 1970s, Zbigniew Brzezinski revived the technocracy movement of the 1930s in 1970. And I'm going to kind of start there, really. And this is Zbigniew Brzezinski. And he wrote this book, Between Two Ages, and he said, power will gravitate to those who control information and can correlate it most rapidly. Our existing post-crisis management institutions will probably be supplemented by pre-crisis management institutions, the task of which will be to identify in advance a likely social crisis and develop a program to cope with them. This could encourage tendencies during the next several decades toward a technocratic dictatorship, leaving less and less room for political procedures as we know them. So basically, he's saying we're going to get rid of politics and have a technocratic dictatorship. That was in 1970. So, he really revived it, and a lot of people took it up. Tony Blair, David Cameron, all that lot, they took it up. And really, this came also out of the Club of Rome. The Earth Summit was in 1992. That was a bit later. And at the Earth Summit, the Club of Rome, prior to the Earth Summit, had created a whole load of Club of Rome reports that kind of made the bones of Agenda 21, which was the basis of the Earth Summit. And it was trying to create the technocratic dictatorship through environmentalism, because a lot of people bought into it. Everybody wants to save the planet, but the people that were running it were doing it. They were oil billionaires, and I'll tell you about them a bit later. And the Club of Rome, and these Club of Rome reports are quite interesting, because one of them, there were three major ones, and the first one was limits to growth, and this was all about there's finite resources. There's not enough to go around. There's not enough resources, too many people on the planet, and something has to be done. Population control, you name it, everything, birth control. And it was a fear. It was all fear. And then the second one was this one in 1987. This is called Our Common Future, otherwise known as the Brundtland Report, written by Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the Prime Minister of Norway at the time in 1987. This one, you see, they brought in all the key factors to bring in this technocratic age. This one was all about equality, and particularly financial equality around the world. And it was all about kind of, shifting money around the world, ostensibly to help third world countries, which sounds really worthy. But what really happened is that they invested money from Europe into India and China, who weren't sanctioned at that point, but then they sanctioned us for, environmental emissions. But all our industry went over to India and China, and that is still the case now. We don't manufacture anything, and it was really a way of controlling the Europe and the West. So anyway, that's that one. And the third one is this one, the First Global Revolution, which is a really, really interesting one because it was where global warming, as they called it then, started. And I'm going to just read you. The Club of Rome, who produced these, are a crisis think tank, an agency of the United Nations. And it's a crisis think tank. They chuck around ideas of creating crises that they will then find the solution for. It's the Hegelian dialect, it's problem, reaction, solution. And that's their job, is to create crises, because out of crisis comes control. So anyway, this is quite interesting, because this is the Club of Rome report that really gets to the bottom of global warming. So here we go. The need for enemies seems to be a common historical factor. States have striven to overcome domestic failure and internal contradictions by designating external enemies. The scapegoat practice is as old as mankind itself. When things get too difficult at home, divert attention by adventure abroad, bring the divided nation together to face an outside enemy, either a real one or one invented for the purpose. Now, that's the kind of thing they do. It's problem, reaction, solution. And they found a way of finding an enemy, because at this time, this came out in 1991, the year before the Earth Summit, and they found the enemy that they wanted, which was us. So, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, if you think about it, the Berlin Wall had come down, the Cold War had ended, they needed an enemy, and bankers need enemies, they need wars. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages and famine and the like would fit the bill. They made it up. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behaviour that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself, and that is why we are under attack right now, because they identified us as the enemy in 1991. They then held the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, and they managed to get 179 heads of state to meet in Rio de Janeiro, and they signed what was the agenda for the 21st century. They signed up for global governance. They didn't know that. They thought they were saving the planet. And, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't save the planet? It was a con. It was set up by oil billionaires and bankers, the Earth Summit. And it's the biggest lie ever told, because that is why we're in the state we're in now. So, basically, this is the man, Maurice Strong. He was the Secretary General of the Earth Summit at the time, and he's a member of the Club of Rome, Trilateral Commission, Council for Foreign Relations, member of the Fabian Society. He's a self-confessed communist in ideology and capitalist in methodology, which is the new communism, communitarianism. He was exiled to China to avoid prison in the US for being involved in the oil for food scandal in 1995, where the UN Security Council made a resolution to supply Iraq with food in exchange for oil. There were revelations of corruption and funds involving Maurice Strong, Adnan Khashoggi, and many other oil billionaires. He loved China and the communist system, and he was friends with Chairman Mao. And so at the Earth Summit, he said this, and I find this a really interesting quote because it really reflects how they want to carbon tax us. And every human action has a value, has a cost to the community. The effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound re-engineering of all of human society, unlike anything the world has ever known. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action will be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Now, if you understood, and I'll be telling you now how the new economic order is going to, how they're trying to change our economic and political order right now, and it's called stakeholder capitalism. And at the moment we have shareholder capitalism, and the WEF have held many, many meetings, and they're transitioning us. They've been transitioning us in the last 10 years. From 2020 onwards, they've been transitioning us into stakeholder capitalism, which is very, very different. It's a new form of ism, and it was put forward as the middle way. It's a kind of melding of capitalism and communism. And the whole idea is that we get a set amount of carbon credits, and we are sanctioned by social media, a bit like the Chinese Zima system, on how we behave. And this is what they intend to do. I personally don't know how they're going to implement all of this. So the only thing is to just look out for it, have it in your peripheral vision, and know about it, so that you can say, actually, no. This is what we have to do. We have to know what they're doing in order to do the other thing, and get creative, swerve around it, because, they are just literally positioning and posturing, and they don't have the power that we sometimes think they do. Now, in 2015, Agenda 21 became Agenda 2030. And if anybody really wants to know, it's just a date, it's just a time. And they failed. They failed so much because they tried to get this done by 2000. They called it the Millennium Goals, the 8 Millennium Goals. They couldn't do it. They failed, and they fail all the time, and we have to remember this. They are failing big time right now, and we have to be emboldened by that and understand and carry on doing what we're doing and not fall into any civil unrest. Just hold firm and just say no. We have to just say no to all the stuff that they throw at us. In 2015, the Pope endorsed the 17 goals of Agenda 2030 because they had to accelerate it. We'd had Greta Thunberg wagging her finger at us, that didn't work, and so they had to what they call accelerate it, and they did. Now that was fine until they went to Rome, Obama went. It was a very underreported thing, but they launched these 17 goals of sustainable development goals. They sound very good on the face of it, but underneath it's all about control. I'm only going to read you one or two of them because there's too many. What the goals really mean, and it's all an inversion of what it really is, because that's what they do. It's a kind of satanic thing, inversion. So goal number, goal: no poverty, zero hunger. So poverty, this is what they say: poverty alleviation and social protection, the UN solution. So basically, it's AI-enabled digital footprint for credit, mobile money access, blockchain identity solutions to enable economic identities for all. They want us to have digital ID so that they can harvest all our data and sell it to third parties, as well as keep their eye on what we're doing. They want our health data so they can monitor it and use it against us later. They want our shopping habits. This is why we have reward cards in shops. It's all going onto a big database. They want to know what you're buying. with your social media. They want to know who you're talking to, what your politics are. Are you an activist? What are you doing? So that they can use it against you later. So, but what this really means is when they say no poverty, they want to make everybody equally poor. Because we know that they're bringing in, and they've trialled it in Wales, a universal basic income and UBI with a fixed amount of carbon credits. So they want to change it. This is why they want to go cashless, because they want us to actually have a set amount of carbon credits. And once they're done, they're done. So if you've turned your heating on a bit too much, or if you've got diabetes and you've gone into Tesco and bought cake, they'll know and they can sanction you. If you speak out of turn against the government or against any of their policies, then as we're seeing now, they can come back at you. And there's a woman who's just been jailed for 15 months for saying something on Facebook, and yet you've got Hugh Edwards looking at massive, horrible internet porn, and he's walking free. So, you know, this is crazy. The BBC should be ashamed of themselves. Don't ever pay your license. They are absolute scumbags. So then you've got end hunger. UN say access to food for all, improve nutrition and food production security. Fantastic, sounds really fluffy and wonderful, doesn't it? But actually the reality is real food replaced with synthetic lab food. We know about the fake meat, we know about the 3D printed meat, GMO mass-produced food production, synthetic proteins, insect proteins, synthetic, you know, we know all about this. Monitoring sensors in waste bins and your data sold on to third parties. So now I'm just getting up to speed now. We've come from 1930 to 2019. And this is how they accelerated. It's all an acceleration process. So in 2019, it wasn't moving fast enough again. They'd already, 2015 to 2019, they need to get 2030. They need to get it all done by 2030. They really want this. And it's all about seizing control of land, sea, your homes, everything. And so they set up something called the UN Strategic Framework Partnership Forum in June 2019. And the whole idea was to find a way of accelerating these 17 goals. It was signed in Geneva between Antonio Guterres and Klaus Schwab of the WEF in June 2019 to accelerate the 17 goals of sustainable development by 2030. The UN Forum Partnership was signed in a meeting held at the United Nations headquarters between UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the economic founder and executive chairman Klaus Schwab of the WEF, to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. The partnership identifies 6 areas of focus: financing the 2030 agenda, climate change, health, digital cooperation, remember that one, gender equality, empowerment of women, education and skills to strengthen and broaden their combined impact and building and existing new collaborations. That sounds, you know, kind of quite good. But digital cooperation, to meet the needs of the 4th industrial revolution while seeking to advance global analysis and standards for digital governance and digital inclusiveness. So really one of the biggest goals buried underneath all the fluffy ones was something called digital cooperation. And that is really getting us all bought into going along with all this digitalization and the data harvesting, giving up cash, and buying into this whole system of technocratic control. Well, they held that, and they obviously then thought, right, we've got to make this work. So 4 months later, they met in New York, in the Johns Hopkins facility in New York, which is all part of, yeah, I mean, it's all part of the agenda. It's financed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Anyway, they had a meeting there, and it was a tabletop exercise, 3 days, of what if there was a pandemic, a novel coronavirus escaped from a wet market in Brazil, and it went around the world. People got sick. It ended up going all around the world to Europe, America, everywhere. What would we do? And then they had all the people there from the WEF, the same people that had met in Geneva, the WEF, the UN, but they'd brought into the mix Bill and Melinda Gates, and of course they were there saying, yeah, we've got this vaccine, and that they'd actually patented at the Pirbright Institute in Wiltshire about 8 or 9 years prior. So yeah, it's a setup, and it was to bring in digital cooperation, because in that time while we were sleeping, all the infrastructure for the 15-minute cities went in, for ULEZ, for surveillance, for just about everything that happened to us during that time. And facial recognition went into supermarkets, the biometrics went into supermarkets to monitor your shopping habits, to take your facial recognition. When you're at those tills, all the human tills disappeared. We got all the automated ones. All of this is part of the plan, and this is why whenever I go to I very rarely go to a supermarket, only to get the odd thing, but I will not go to an automated one. I'll go to a human till. And they're coming back. A lot of people will queue up rather than go to those things, and that's what's good. It's happened here in Morrison's, and I've noticed the human tills sort of creeping back again, which is brilliant. And cashless, we've got to keep cash, really, really important. So anyway, that's what happened, because whilst we were sleeping, it all kicked off. So yeah, and of course Klaus Schwab, he said, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine and reset our world. And of course, he'd already written these books in 2016. If you really want to know what they're doing, and this transition from shareholder capitalism, which is a free market economy, to shareholder capitalism, to stakeholder capitalism, which is basically a pact between government and corporations. It is actually fascism, and we have to understand what this really means to us. These books are a must-read if you want to understand the intentions of WEF United Nations. Schwab describes his 10-year transition, and that's from 2020, so it's only a 5-year transition now. I don't think they'll be able to do it. A totally new political system that we haven't agreed to is being forced on us, and worst of all, hardly anyone knows about it. It's called stakeholder capitalism. This is it. The transactions, when you're when you go to a shop, if you have a cash transaction, it's totally anonymous because it's between you and the seller. If you go in with a credit card, it's between you and the bank. But if you actually have transactions with a central bank, if they bring in a central banking digital system, this is where all your data is in one place and it can be shared with other agencies and sold on to third parties. So the whole idea of a central banking digital system that they really are trying so hard to implement, and they could easily do it if they decided to crash economy, but I think at the moment we have our autonomy, and if we're aware of what's going to happen, keep using cash. All the time, people are flowing, that cash is flowing, it's an energy that needs to flow. They cannot implement that, and they've tried so hard to do it. They keep talking about cyber attacks, I don't know, they try and scare us with all sorts of stuff. This is quite interesting. This is, the 15-minute cities, limitations, imposed on motorists, and the climate initiatives that are not green at all. They're environmentally and economically disastrous. Geofencing. There's a car dealer in Bristol called Jeff Buys, and he had somebody come to him and said, I want to get rid of my electric car. And it was because when he took it in for a service, he went to collect it, and they said, we've given you a technological upgrade. And he thought, thanks, right, okay. And it was only when he read all the small print, he realized that actually his car had been given this technological upgrade without his consent. And he found out that it had been fitted with geofencing and geotiming capabilities. This facility must not be used without consent unless by law, which negates the former. So geofencing is a technology that allows a car to be remotely controlled and shut down on command by government in an emergency, and they're preparing us for climate lockdowns in line with the 15-minute cities. So, you know, so long as we're aware of that, and you can actually, you know, if you have got an electric car, I wouldn't advise one. They burst into flames. They're not very reliable. But don't go for any, you know, get your car checked and get that geofencing technology taken off. You have the right. You have the right. Yeah, this is something to be aware of, because we've got to challenge all our town councils about who is on this global covenant of smart city mayors or mayors for climate energy, because this is a way a lot of councils have gone unitary, and they're taking the decision-making further away from the people. So they're amalgamating big areas and making them one. It's happened here in Somerset. We've now got Somerset Council, which was an amalgamation of Mendip and all sorts of other ones. So what they tend to do is the global government of mayors for climate and energy are directly elected mayors, and they're trying to bring them into Parliament to actually take over from our government, so that actually they're not elected by us, and they have the power, or they think they do, unless we call them out. They have the power they're sometimes called the Compact of Mayors. They have the right to impose climate lockdowns at will. The concerns I have about the Covenant of Mayors for climate change is that they're not democratically accountable. They might make climate commitments without fully understanding the public, consulting the public, and leading to a democratic deficit and limited public input on important policies. They also, it's a non-binding nature of the covenant will lead to greenwashing and corruption, and we can see that with our councils anyway, let alone if we have powerful people called directly elected mayors put into Parliament, getting rid of our politicians. Our politicians have no idea about this. It's a very big document. I've got it at home. I've been reading it, looking at it. Climate policies can impose financial burdens on businesses and residents, potentially leading to job losses, higher costs and disruption in local economies. Critics may also see climate policies as a vehicle for advancing broader political or ideological agendas, exaggerating the climate risks and pushing centralisation. Massive waste of money with the net zero stuff that we've been dealing with. And again, everything is all about net zero and emissions. You know, we've been completely hoodwinked. No one can prove that there is a climate emergency. No one. We've challenged our council, they couldn't do it. They sat here and they didn't defend it. We had climate scientists on the stage, they couldn't defend it. They just whinged afterwards. They cannot prove it. There is no climate emergency, and the word emergency is very emotive, because in emergency times, then the government just take powers to address that emergency. They don't need to go through any democratic process, and that's really important to know. So the climate emergency, they can then force lockdowns, climate lockdowns, and now we've got pay per mile coming as well, which means that they'll get rid of car tax, or they're trying to, and they're trying to implement paying per mile. I don't know how, unless it's number plate recognition, I don't know how they're going to do it, but for some people who perhaps don't pay a lot of car tax, if they do travel a lot, they might travel to see family, whatever, they will be hit really badly by this. So we have to be aware of what is coming at us, because not only we're just being taxed to the hilt, and this country is in dire straits with people on food banks. I mean, luckily Glastonbury, bless it, what a wonderful place to live. You can eat every day for free if you don't have the money. Amazing place. But people are on the poverty line, and this is going to force people into even more poverty. If we just need to know what they're doing. This is the Absolute Zero document. It's called the UK Fires document. Do look at it. This is what Richard was talking about when he said they're going to take our wood burners away. No, they're not. We're going to bloody well fight for our wood burners because we need autonomy when it comes to heating and doing all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, this is a crazy document. It was actually, it's in Hansard. It was debated in the House of Lords in 2020, I think, or 2019, and to be given, immediate, authority, and it's UK specific at the moment, which is really odd. You know, we're the only country in the world to have actually put climate change into law, and there's a reason for that. They have to break the UK. They have to break the UK. Because we've got a very strong constitution, but they're trying to eat away at it, and they have done that for a number of years with legislation, just eating away our common law constitution. So anyway, you can't see this, but look it up. It's called the UK Fires Absolute Zero document, and this is page 4, which actually has a roadmap to 2030. And, you know, it's climate imperialism. It's trying to gain power using climate change. And by 2049, they want no planes flying out of the UK, no shipping out of the UK, because apparently ships are, aren't green. It's a silly document, but actually they've just banned and getting rid of wood-burning stoves, gas boilers, gas cookers, all gas appliances. And creating a circular economy, like manufacturing has to go down by 60% because they want us to have this circular economy where basically there's no growth because it's about transitioning into this new economy that we have not asked for, we have not voted for, and it's taking us out of our normal price-based economy which flows like businesses. They're trying to cripple business so that it stops and create what's known as a circular economy where we just recycle everything but nothing is manufactured, apart from in India and China. So this is the way, no planes in or out of the UK by 2049, no shipping out of the UK by 2049, no beef or lamb production after 2049, no wood-burning stoves, no gas boilers, no gas appliances. And they've already banned wood burners in Scotland. I mean, madness. I mean, the thing is that they're chopping trees down in Scotland forest. They're shipping the trees over to Canada to create pellets that then go back to the Drax burner up north to create energy. I mean, how stupid is that? I mean, none of it makes sense. And yet they won't let people use a few logs, and we know why. They want everything, basically renewables and everything like that. Now, I'm going to sort of skip. We've got ESGs. This is called environmental and social governance. If you've got a business, you'll know what I'm talking about because you've got to conform to environmental and social governance within your business. You've got to be practicing diversity, equity and inclusion, and there's massive paperwork, and it is a huge minefield for not making your business thrive because you'll have to be jumping through lots of hoops, and it's all about scoring. If you don't come up to scratch with environmental and social governance, you will be scored down and you will not be able to run that business. And it's the same with farming. All our farmers are being disincentivized because they have to adhere to something called biodiversity net gain. Biodiversity net gain is a scoring system that NGOs and organisations can actually be controlling your land because they're environmental. They can control your land and tell you what you can and can't do, and actually have the ability at the end of the day to stop you from growing if they think that your score isn't high enough. And it's called biodiversity net gain. I mean, I don't know how long I've got, but I hope to get some questions and answers in this. In 2023, a new financial instrument was created by the Securities and Exchange Commission at the request of the New York Stock Exchange. Natural asset companies natural asset classes or natural asset corporations are based on environmental stewardship. And this is, again, it's people telling you, environmental people telling you what you can and can't do with your land. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, we all want a good environment. We want to look after our land. But why can't it be like it was in the old days, where you had your own stewardship, you had your own autonomy over your land? And most farmers, and you know, our land didn't flood when the farmers dredged the Reens in Somerset. Our land was, you know, when there were trees growing along the River Parrett, sucking up the water, our land didn't flood. You put it in the hands of the Environment Agency, it becomes chaos. And I saw that happen before my very eyes in 2014. So, you know, all of this it's kind of problem, reaction, solution. They take your autonomy away and they create a crisis and they say, right, it's your fault, you're going to have to pay. You're going to be scored down. You will lose your credits, your carbon credits. So, you know, how does a company take control of land and make it profitable while not using it? It actually belongs to you. Well, they take it over, they say, oh, it's conservation, restoration, sustainable management. You know, the thing is that they're creating this financial instrument, this way of using an economy, a green economy, it's greenwashing, so that, you know, effectively it's a tax on land ownership. At the end of the day, that's what it is. I just want to look at the Sainsbury's Future of Food report. This is, do look at this, Sainsbury's Future of Food. Quite an awful document, because Sainsbury's has this idea, and they've said this, we're going to get rid of farms in the future. And they've got a plan, literally, from 2025 right up to 2169 of food production. And this is all about a monopoly on food. And of course, it's going to be really bad food, because this is what they have in mind. Do look at this, because it's quite important. This is why we just have to be aware to say absolutely blooming not doing this. You know, you can see up there you've got grasshoppers. They want you to eat bugs. Everything is grown sort of under artificial light. You've got 3D printed meat there. They want us to eat a lot of jellyfish and seaweed as well, because they're getting rid of meat. You know, meat, dairy. All of that is being phased out in the sustainable farming incentive. Most farmers in Somerset, over the next 3 years, if they don't give up their dairy and their beef production, or reduce it, and their lamb production, they will be sanctioned, and their subsidies are taken away. So this is what's happening. This is the man from DEFRA came round to my farmer friend and said, you'll have to set up businesses on your land, like glamping, anything but growing food, anything but keeping livestock. This is how it's going to work. This is how they disenfranchise a whole country. So this is about waking farmers up. I've been down in Devon. I found some amazing awake farmers down in Devon and Cornwall. But Somerset, there's an awful lot of ones that have not a clue what's coming at them. So yeah, anyway. We need to just keep aware of all of this, and you know, renewables before food. You know, well, our land is being covered in these Chinese-created solar panel farms that are highly toxic. You know, you only need, you know, there to be hailstones breaking them, and all the toxins go into the land. You can't get rid of them. You know, you can't dispose of them when they've reached their shelf life. And all of that land should be growing land and livestock land. And yet renewables are covering the land, and they're inefficient. We've got wind farms, solar farms, all the planning, loads of planning applications going in and being rubber stamped by our councils. Nothing about food security, absolutely nothing. So if it's not housing, it's solar farms. If it's not solar farms, it's wind farms. And if it's not wind farms, then literally the land is being laid to waste. Herbal lays, they call it. Oh, just give it over to wildlife. Don't grow anything. Whatever you do, don't grow anything. Or keep livestock. So there's a lesson there for us to be aware of. Yeah, how long have I got? 5, okay. Right, I just want to move on then to just quickly the Summit of the Future, which happened, it happened 22nd to the 23rd of September, and basically it was in New York, and it was really a summit to accelerate yet again they call it the race to 2030. And it, you know, a lot of it was talking about, you know, sort of, we've got to look to the future, because there's going to be lots of shocking things happening. You know, they kept talking about cyber attacks. They talk about food shortages. These are all created, and this is what they do. And this is the Pact for the Future. A pact for who? That's what I'd like to know. A pact with who? Again, you know, it's all about the rise of, you know, we have to fight against the rise of popularism, and what they're talking about is people opposing what they're doing. Now, this was quite interesting. This is the bird flu summit that ended today. Now, what they do is they have things like, you know, I saw the Future Summit really all about them trying to concoct a bit like they did in Geneva before the scamdemic, and they held the tabletop exercise, you know, 4 months later. Well, with this, they had the Pact of the Future the 23rd of September, but on the 1st of October, yeah, they held the bird flu summit, which was again a tabletop exercise, and they're trying to scare us again. Will we be fooled? I don't think so. I don't think so, and they're trying their best. They really are trying their best. And this bird flu thing, it's yeah, it's all about, you know, it will feature comprehensive agenda packed with breakout sessions for mass fatality management planning, surveillance of data and management, preparing communities and strategies, local partnership. I mean, all this stuff, you know, command, control and management. It's all about management systems of control. So then, of course, oh yeah, this is it. It's going to affect chickens. It's funny about the chicken thing, cows and humans, apparently. More engineered crises. Yeah, chickens to be registered. Your chickens have to be registered now, as from the October the 1st. And, you know, what Richard said about the chicken thing was hilarious, because people decided to flood the system. They were registering the frozen chicken in their fridge. And, you know, in their freezer. They were registering their dog that identified as a chicken. They were registering I've got mental health issues. I've got a chicken imaginary friend, and it's very real to me. And do you know, it crashed the system. And this is what we have to do. We have to be creative and funny about things, and look at it in a humorous way. Just observe them, because they are idiots. They're total idiots. And they really think they're going to win this, but we are ahead of the game. And everything that's happening, and we can see it crumbling around us, it's all failing. Everything is failing. I think, you know, I'm just going to leave the last one, which is learn who really rules over you, simply by finding out who you're not allowed to criticise. And I'd like to just give a plug to my friend Richard Jeffs, who's made this film, Stakeholder Communism. It's been taken down from YouTube, but you can find it because he did an interview with Lee Hall on British thought leaders. Have a look at that, because it really explains stakeholder capitalism, but he calls it stakeholder communism because that's what it is. Anyway, if there's any, I want to give a plug to, and thanks to Richard and Clive, obviously. Fairy Aromatics, fabulous people. Buy stuff from them. They're going to be here a little bit longer. And cakes, thank you, and the everything. And to Clive and the team. And mainly, Roseanne, thank you, my darling. You've done a brilliant job, Roseanne. Thank you so much. And yeah, big love to Clive and Richard. I don't know, have we got time for a little Q&A? No, probably not. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause. Sandi Adams.
frightened.